anything they set their mind to. Tests do not have the ability to measure drive, character, or perseverance, but a teacher does. Stop making them teach the test and just let them teach. Refuse the test. If 5% of the students refuse it, the results are void. I was told that New Jersey had great schools and great teachers. Why then are we ruining them with untested curriculum? Thank you for your time.
Okay, good morning, members of the Study Commission. Thank you for taking the time to hear us, and I really hope that you are hearing us. I am a 22-year special education teacher in Burlington County. I actually teach high school, and I love what I do. I have no children of my own, but I am the biggest advocate for my students in public education. That's why I'm here today. Commissioner Hesby, you stated half of the students are graduating without the skills and knowledge they need. You also mentioned that you would like to hear from the testifiers is what we should do about this societal problem. What I fail to understand is what skills and knowledge do the students not have? Is it skills and knowledge to attend college? Because I have a major problem with that. Why do we expect or need every child to attend college? Who would you have called if your pipes had frozen in the 0-degree temperature these past few days? You would not have called a lawyer, a doctor, or a teacher. You would have called your non-college educated plumber. A few weeks ago, we gave midterms, which, by the way, prepare you for college since you take midterms and finals in college, not standardized tests. Anyway, one of my students who is a junior and has only passed one midterm and one final throughout high school received a 74 on her history midterm. She was so happy and proud of herself. That to me was success. That to her was success. On March 2nd, when she takes the PARCC, she is going to struggle. She is going to get upset. She is going to feel discouraged. How do I know this? Because I have taught her for the past 2.5 years and I know her well. I know her better than any information a standardized test could tell me about her. And why? Why are we putting students through this? The students that will do well in this test already do well in school. They are college ready. The top will always rise to the top. But my student, she has a learning disability, and this is not her fault. It's nobody's fault, and she should not have to be stuck in the middle of this tug of war of standardization. What I love about teaching in New Jersey is that we've always taken care of our special needs students. I feel as if we are doing them a disservice now. The students that I teach have mild to moderate disabilities and are considered high functioning. I keep them in my study skills program for 4 years, and I teach one pull-out English class to our lower level students. I do not need a test to tell me which ones are capable of college and which ones are not. In fact, one of my students just graduated from Holy Family College and is now a nurse at Cooper. I knew she had what it would take to go to college. This is not the case for all of my students. In fact, because of this, I break hearts a lot, and this breaks my heart. When I have students who tell me they want to be doctors or veterinarians, but due to their disability are reading on a 4th to 6th grade level, I know I have my work cut out for me. I have to find alternative future jobs for them because college is not an option. College not being an option is not their fault, but I have 4 years to help them figure out an alternative job skill. Many of my students hear others talking about college in the future, especially during their senior year. They feel ostracized because they don't know what to do with their lives. Despite doing poorly on the AccuPlacer, they feel they need to tell their friends that, yes, indeed, they too are attending Burlington Community College. But what if we took some of the $108 million that we spend on testing and the money that local districts have to spend and find alternative programs for these students? We need to go back to having more readily accessible hands-on programs for some of our students. Some of our students do not like school, whether it be a learning disability which makes school challenging, whether they have no support at home and worry about where their next meal will come from, whether they simply want to be a plumber, electrician, or an esthetician. Maybe some students just don't like school, and that's okay. But we have to find alternative ways of earning a living for these children. College is not and should not be for everyone. The VOTEC schools are filled, and there's a lack of programs in many of the public schools for this type of student. I implore you to look at ways to bring back the trades in schools, or to look at shared services with VOTEC schools. Next, fund the schools appropriately. How is it that the state can find money for high-stakes testing, yet cannot fund schools? In a recent article written by Mark Weber, Jersey Jasmine, he states that the Education Law Center recently reminded us that the state has now underfunded school districts by $6 billion since the passage of the School Funding Act Reform Act of 2008. Meanwhile, important school programs have been cut. Preschool expansion languished, and many of our school facilities are crumbling. Yet, we are talking about standardized tests to go to college, while we have students attending poorly funded schools with little resources. Would any of you let your children attend these schools? I already know the answer to that question, and it should be clear, if you would not let your children go there, then you need to recommend that we not give any more money to Pearson or the PARCC Consortium and invest right here in our own state. Maybe with adequately funded schools and after-school programs, we could better engage these struggling students. I want to go back to Commissioner Hespe's question about how are we going to fix the societal problems. Well, sir, you answered your own question. This is not necessarily a school problem as much as it is a societal problem, and we need to help the failing schools perform better by supplying them with adequate funding and invest in the whole community. Also, leave the schools that are performing well alone. On April 20th, 2010, Governor Christie accused teachers of being drug dealers and using kids as mules. I am now accusing the New Jersey legislature and the New Jersey Department of Education as being the drug dealers and using our precious children as mules so they in a battle of private greed versus public good. It's time to properly invest in on our children, our future. Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world.
My name is Ginny Murphy, and I'm the president of the Washington Township School Board in Gloucester County. My comments today are made as my comments today expressed are as an individual board member and not on behalf of our board. Just as an administrative note, speaker number 26 is not going to be speaking tonight. He's the president. He's the principal of our school district, and with the snow day, we are actually doing PARCC testing today, alternate Friday. So you give me a little leeway on my time. I'm going to absorb some of his comments into my testimony. Well, I'm sure there'll be many speakers and educators today that will share their concerns about Common Core and about the amount of standardized testing. I would like to share with the task force the direct and indirect impact Common Core, PARCC, and Achieve New Jersey have had on my district. It is important for you to hear specifics on the logistical nightmare PARCC has created for schools. Somewhere in the quest for common standards and Common Core, we lost our common sense. District impact, direct impact. Our enrollment is just under 8,000 students, housed in 11 different buildings. Our teaching staff is comprised of approximately 800 members. Our business administrator has estimated the financial impact of these unfunded mandates at over $5 million, and those costs will continue to rise. Specifically, $626,000 on Marzano and Achieve New Jersey, $1.8 million on infrastructure, $2.6 million on technology, which includes computers, bandwidth, wireless access points, and the list goes on. Educational decisions should be made at the local level, and local school boards determine when and how we spend taxpayer money to improve student achievement. If the state wants to mandate new and additional standardized testing, then the state should pay to implement it. It's simple. State mandate, state pay. Some will counter with that the state provided PARCC aid and growth aid. Let me be clear on this point. The state provided $10 per student in PARCC aid and $10 per student in growth aid for a total of $147,120. Our district is forced to incur over $5 million on these unfunded and underfunded mandates. These are not one-time expenditures, and while some of the technology purchases may have been needed at some point, PARCC dictated volume, timing, and the quality of these purchases. In a release from the State Department of Education dated January 29, 2015, entitled, quote, Parent PARCC Questions Answered, on page 7, the question is, how much is the new test costing our town? The answer, There is no local cost involved in developing or scoring a PARCC exam. The state pays for all PARCC exams. None of the cost for PARCC comes directly from the local school budget. Let me repeat that. None of the cost for PARCC come directly from the local school budget. This statement is absolutely ludicrous. The test itself is not costing the local districts anything, but the technology that's required to administer the test is astronomical. Those costs come directly from the taxpayers. These mandates are not only severely impacting local school budgets, but they are draining our educational resources. And with the 2% cap law, are making it impossible for local boards of education to deliver sustainable budgets. Now let's move on to indirect impact of PARCC on school districts. How much work and time have gone into the district's preparation to administer PARCC testing? We will test 5,400 students. 243 students at the high school alone will have extended time due to IEP, 504, and ESL accommodations. Stop and think about the prep time needed to complete 28 data fields per student, along with the corresponding PMPs, personal needs profiles. This is data that's not reusable. Our district guidance counselors are doing PARCC registration for over 1 month. Just our high school will use 100 test sites to test 1,775 students, requiring 200 certificated staff, 2 per class, to proctor the test. All need to be trained. The DOE provided training to South Jersey schools just 6 weeks prior to the mandatory testing. Thursday, January 15th, on administration procedures and security for testing, and Wednesday, January 21st, on test session management online. Turnkey training and preparation of our staff follow these sessions and is still ongoing. Our district has 13 site test coordinators made up of our guidance counselors, 6 at the elementary level, 6 at the middle level, and 1 at the high school. We have 1 district test coordinator. Keep in mind that in addition to PARCC, our district is required to test using NJ Ask in science in grades 4 and 8, and NJVCT at the high school. PARCC is given twice, which is more than double the responsibilities of the district test coordinator, along with the site test coordinators at each school. Our field testing and network infrastructure trials were done last spring. We conducted an additional self-administered test in December, and our network failed. We are in the process of completing another trial 3 days this week. How much instructional time is being lost with all of this practice testing? Tech issues. Pearson is still changing things on their end. Last week they made a change that impacted the end user in schools. The Java version is now not compatible, so all district computers need to be upgraded to the new Java version to access the test. All laptops in the district have to be reconfigured as a result of that change. That requires manpower. That requires resources in our district.
You're going to have to...
I'm going to go. Yes, I got another 5 minutes. On February 2nd, it was learned that the practice tests being used to prepare students do not support the software for the graphing calculator. It took a long time for the practice test to be made available, and now they're not in line with what the test will look like. On February 13th, it was learned that the written version of the test will not be available until March 16th, which will impact our students that need to take a paper test. Our district will begin computer testing March 2nd. That means a child that has to take the paper test will do nothing while others take the computer test. And then that student will miss additional instructional time to take the paper test after the district gets back to classes. Prior to coming here today, I spent hours with the people on the ground in our district. And I was able to get a quote from one of our administrators. And I quote, "The demand that the PARCC testing has placed on a large district and a large high school in terms of financial costs, and the toll it has taken on staff is immeasurable. The state of New Jersey has done a poor job of training key stakeholders on the implementation of PARCC. Timing is everything, and it's clear that the state of New Jersey is just not ready for this, as evidenced by their lack of accurate answers and conflicting information published in a variety of locations on the web and via ongoing state memoranda. This has caused district and site test coordinators, administrators of various departments, and our tech team to put many other critical tasks on hold. It has caused us to put in exorbitant additional hours outside of our normal workday to keep our heads above water, to support programs and complete our normal day-to-day responsibilities while preparing for PARCC implementation. This has been the most challenging month in my 15-year career as an educator, unquote. I am asking the task force members to take a minute to consider their own places of employment. How would a new law that increased your budget by $5 million and repurpose 13 key members of your staff on a new priority impact your organization's performance and effectiveness? I personally believe the indirect impact of PARCC and staff resources and morale is very significant. I think you need to think about what this is doing to the morale in schools. Mr. Hespy, you seem to be rushing me, so I'm going to get to my solutions.
I've given you 10 minutes, actually.
I incorporated some.
Cooperation.
Thank you, sir. You had made a comment in the newspaper recently, Mr. Hespy, that you wanted to hear public solutions to some of these problems. So here are some of my solutions. One, delay the use of test scores and teacher evaluations until at least 2017. Two, allow local district a choice on standardized testing tools. Reduce standardized testing cycles to once per year instead of twice per year. Consider every other year testing cycles for standardized testing. Eliminate initiative fatigue, and that's what we all have, and let our teachers teach. Better define college and career readiness. More time should be spent on identifying college and career readiness aptitudes and developing curriculum around it. For example, a student in a cosmetology program at GCIT earns a license from the state, but shouldn't she also be able to earn her high school graduation diploma without taking the PARCC? Like I said before, somewhere in the quest for common standards and common core, we've lost our common sense. And as somebody that represents a big district like Washington Township, PARCC is not sustainable, ongoing. We can't afford this program. If we do, we're going to really, really suffer in our districts, and we're going to end up cutting programs that we can't afford to cut. Thank you very much.
My name is Janice Lennox. I live in North Blackwood, New Jersey. I'm not an educator. I'm a grandparent. And on March 23rd, 2013, 2 years ago, I began a journey with a few friends of mine in South Jersey, which led me to this day. On that day, I penned a letter to 40 representatives, including the Lieutenant Governor and then Commissioner Chris Curry. The letter expressed our group's concerns regarding Common Core and PARCC. After what seemed like a very long wait, I received 4 responses from our representatives. The congressman, I received 3 from congressmen and 1 from my state senator. The congressman's responses could have been written by one hand, since they all claimed they knew nothing. It was not a federal issue, and they could not, I should say, would not help. The senator said he had no knowledge of Common Core or PARCC, but he would look into it or have his staff and get back to me. Our struggle began with that letter. In the last 2 years, we have done much research, attended many hearings, gave testimonies to the NJBOA, NJ Assembly Education Committee, New Jersey Assembly, and many local boards of freeholders and school boards. In June of 2013, we were very successful, so we thought, in having legislation sponsored, then introduced by Senator Jeff Van Drew in the 1st District in New Jersey. The identical Assembly Bill 3081, which was introduced, passed almost unanimously in our favor. However, the Governor and the Senate President Sweeney decided not to bring the Senate bill to the floor for a vote. That was June of 2014. So much time wasted. I'm here because I care about my grandchildren's educational freedom and that of future generations of children. You guys were appointed by the Governor to examine PARCC and Common Core. These hearings are part of your assignment. I might remind you that public hearings were part of the never voted on Senate Bill 2154. Public hearings should have been conducted before the standards were signed off on back in June of 2010. So far, we have not seen any analysis of the contents of either the test or the standards by any New Jersey mathematicians or literary scholars. Dr. Sandra Stotsky and Dr. James Milgram, the only two experts on the validation committee in 2009, did not sign off on the standards because they found them to be inferior. Why implement such standards, and why then require children to be tested on them if they are inferior? Who were the members of that panel, the original validation panel? Why aren't they coming forward with their opinions? Why the shroud of secrecy behind who really wrote the standards? Had Senate Bill 2154 been passed, we would not be standing here on this horribly cold February morning. The bill now lying dormant on the Senate floor laid out a plan to examine Common Core and PARCC. It very much included parental participation. The words keep going through my mind: if there's nothing to hide, hide nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, this agenda began in 2009, adopted in 2010. However, it's taken 5 years for parents to be made aware that they can and must stand up for their children's rights as well as their own. And let's not forget the New Jersey taxpayers who have also a vested interest. Teachers are leaving the profession. Why? Children are crying themselves to sleep at night over what their glory days of learning should be. Why? If there's nothing wrong with these tests, and they are so brilliantly constructed, then why all the fuss? New Jersey is a leader in educational standing in the U.S. We already have standards. We already have testing. Who is making these decisions for our children? Regarding the newly issued interim report, I would say that until New Jersey citizens see a report authored by some of the mathematicians, engineers, or scientists at colleges and universities in New Jersey, these reports mean nothing. New Jersey citizens need to hear from people who can read math standards and review math test items on the PARCC test. Until that kind of report is available, the comments from non-experts mean little. We need to know what exactly PARCC is assessing to make New Jersey students college ready. Granted, you have highly impressive resumes, all of you have backgrounds in education, and you know how to conduct a meeting. But do you know that 9 plus 7 does not have to equal 16? If you're willing, you can explain why. Did you know how to type in the 3rd grade? I have 2 twin granddaughters in 3rd grade, and they know how to do a lot of things, but they're not good at keyboarding. How many words can you type a minute? Did you know that there are several sexually explicit, inappropriate books aligned with the Common Core standards for students as young as 10 years? It's perfectly normal as an example of a Common Core aligned book for 4th grade. If you don't believe in alternative lifestyles, then why does my 6th grade grandson have to learn about it in ELA? Common Core and its partner PARCC are an attempt to turn our children into mindless clones and robots who all think alike and can be controlled by a monitor and a bunch of circuits. It will also cause teachers who love the profession to leave it behind due to the new regulations tied to the position that hamper their ability to teach and enjoy the individuality of their students. We have a bill still active in the Senate that should have been voted on. It's a good bill. It's a solid bill. It expresses everything that these folks want. And it would have saved you guys a lot of trouble. Still there. 2154, Senate Bill 2154. Call your legislators and tell them to vote. You know we had the votes for passage back last June. Why the governor decided on executive order, it's unclear to me. Anyway, I urge you to do the research, use due diligence, and when you render your findings, as your children too, are at the mercy of this agenda. Thank you very much.
Jack Bell, Washington Township, retired school counselor from Cherry Hill. Commissioner Heskey calls for alternatives to the assessment issue. I call for a particular paradigm shift in testing, assessments, and the unconstitutional and illegal, in my humble opinion, the federal intrusion in education. What is that paradigm shift? Get rid of the Common Core and get rid of PARCC. There has been no validation of the core standards by a public process, nor any validation of its college readiness level in either mathematics or English language arts by the higher education faculty in New Jersey that I'm aware of. Any tests based on invalid standards are also invalid by definition. Just recently, Ms. Slover, who is the CEO of PARCC, allegedly indicated that politics is the reason for 14 to 15 of the original 24 states backing away from PARCC. Hearing issue? Our public education is being guided and bought by people such as Gates' $200 million in counting, for example, who have an eye towards a focus on technology and the civil arts, and their hope for the evisceration of the Public Employees Union. Yes, you're going to hear of the refusal and the opt-out movement. The public senses finally it is losing the local authority over its community schools as well as their children. Speaking of politics, why is it that we have data mining? Why was the 1974 FERPA law changed without congressional approval to weaken the Federal Protection Act? Duncan circumvented the Disabilities Education Act by mandating how states' special ed programs are to be evaluated. Their funding and the use of the NAEP test, which is also an egregious violation of the mandate never to be used for high-stakes testing. And consider the law that established the Department of Ed itself. It was trashed. More importantly, why does the 10th Amendment mean nothing to Duncan, nor to get the law? Why does our governor flip-flop on Common Core? Does it really see the light of the issue, or is it political ambition? The University of South Carolina law professor, Derek Black, in an article in the Vanderbilt Law Review, argues that the administration's waiver program is both constitutionally illegal and a bad precedent. I quote, "Two of the most significant events in the history of public education occurred over the last year. First, after 2 centuries of local control and variation, states adopted a national curriculum. Second, states changed the way they would evaluate and retain teachers, significantly altering teachers' most revered right to tenure. The changes were the result of the United States Secretary of Education exercising unprecedented agency power in the midst of an educational crisis, the impending failure of almost all of the nation's schools under the No Child Left Behind. Not one school district that I'm aware of could ever reach 100% efficiency for all of its students. As a practical matter, he federalized education in just a few short months. So my topic is joined at the hip to CARCC, student growth percentiles. Student growth percentiles are not designed for inferring teachers' influence on student outcomes. Student growth percentiles do not control for various factors outside of a teacher's control, such as differences in summer experiences which vary by student economic background, differences in income setting and access to home resources, differences in access to outside-of-school tutoring and family resources and income. Variations in kids' daily lives exist as a function of societal economic status. Student growth percentiles are not backed by research on estimating teacher effectiveness. Research on SGPs has shown them to be poor, isolating teacher influence. The governor has touted the Bill Gates MET project, arguing that student growth percentile measures should have a substantial place in teacher evaluation. That particular project never addressed student growth percentiles. The measures simply aren't designed for making such assertions. Which basically raises issues of fairness and reliability in an evaluation system for teacher tenure and other employment. If these measures are employed, their use will exacerbate the existing disincentives for teachers or principals to seek employment in schools with high poverty, low average performing schools, or schools with higher percentages of non-proficient special education students. New Jersey's SGPs retain substantial bias at the school level, indicating that they are a very poor indicator of teacher influence. The SGP creates a risk that a teacher will be erroneously deprived of their property rights, such as tenure. In essence, these two concerns about SGP raises serious issues of validity and reliability. My summation, suggestions. We need a moratorium and to create this process as a pilot project for the next 2 or 3 years to avoid legal expenses which might be incurred by local public school districts obligated to defend the indefensible when they get sued because of their SGPs. I suggest that each of you do your research regarding the use of value-added measurement devices and SGPs which have been shown to be unreliable and lack the validity and empirical research to support their use. Read and listen to the experts. It's been years of research that are compiled by the following: Linda Darling-Hammond, Audrey Amron Beardsley, Edward Harpel, Bruce Baker, for example, are all examples that you can go to regarding the proper role of testing. Not Duncan or other non-educators at the federal level who have never been in a classroom. Not profit test makers like PARCC, software and hardware vendors and foundations looking to make a dollar. There is a failure by the state and the State Board of Ed, the governor, and prior, as well as present commissioners, to understand the disconnect between existing research and current practices. We need a real paradigm shift in the area of assessment. Instead of a measure, pressure, and punish model, we need a diagnostic, remediate, accelerated model that personalizes instruction, empowers students, involves parents, and provides real-time feedback. Eliminate assessments focused on labeling our schools and teachers. Eliminate teachers having to teach to a test. Without a balance between accountability and responsibility, you will be recommending failure for our schools and our teachers and our students. Finally, if you do your research, you will find that there is no other high-performing nation that tests every child every year from grades 3 to 8. Unless you happen to be a shareholder in Pearson or Law Hill. It's a massive waste of children's time, loss of instruction, and our taxpayers' money. Our teachers and schools are not failing the students as reported. Our government is the problem. Its refusal to deal with poverty, which is basically the problem in some of our low-performing schools. They're not dealing with that particular issue. They're all reflecting it back to the teachers. I thank you for this time, and I hope I didn't reach my usual 10 minutes.
Jack, could I have that testimony?
Good morning. Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Antilla. I'm 8 years old in a third grade student at Elementary School in Washington County, New Jersey. Today we will talk to you about 3 concerns I have about the PARCC. Number 1, most of the kids in third grade use iPads and iPods, play, text, read, FaceTime. We use them all the time. So when I took the practice park exam yesterday, I used a laptop. Why a laptop? We're so comfortable using iPads. Why would you take a test on a laptop, which most of us are not familiar with using? Number 2, it's not that I dislike PARCC. You just have too many tests. For example, in the past month I've taken 1 reading benchmark, 1 math test, 1 Spanish benchmark, 2 science tests, and 2 social studies tests. That's 7 tests so far in February, and it's only February 19th. Wait, I also took the PARCC practice test yesterday, so 8 tests in 3 weeks. I think everyone would agree that's way too much testing. Can someone please pick a test, the PARCC or benchmarks? Number 3 is my final concern. Yesterday, more than half of my class couldn't even log on to the test, so maybe you should have given all the schools more time to prepare for the PARCC test. In conclusion, I think we should spend less time taking all of these tests and more time doing project presentations. My skills to get up here and speak without learning to preparing for the bar. I learned more from my project experiences and presenting to my class. That is a skill I will need in life. I would like more of these skills, not more tests. Thank you for your time today. I sincerely hope you listen to everyone that testified today, especially me.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michelle Mallon. I'm a mother and grandmother and retired pediatric RN. I've been doing research on the Common Core State Standards Initiative for 2 years now and have found many concerning issues. For the sake of brevity, I will list my concerns instead of reading them all in paragraph form. I was going to read some excerpts out of here, but as there are children in this room, it's totally inappropriate. I did ask to pass these to you so you could look at what I have marked and the pictures in this totally inappropriate book, but I was told that you can't see it.
What?
I'm going to, because I can't leave them with those.
Okay, will we maybe get a screenshot?
Sure, I can pass them down to you.
Okay, that would be helpful.
So, back to my list of concerns. The negative effects on children. There are numerous reports of increased stress levels reported by parents, teachers, and child psychiatrists. Crying, frustration, self-mutilation, cutting, fear or refusal to go to school from children who used to love it, decreased self-esteem, many previously academically successful students stating, I am dumb, I can't do it, etc. Parents are increasingly worried about the well-being of their children. Some comments I've received from traveling around the state, giving presentations and speaking to parents, boards, and consumers are, my child is in first grade and I can't help them with their homework. This has been reported by engineers, mathematicians, and college professors, as well as many mothers. Mothers told me this has caused our home life to be a nightmare. Homework time is an absolute nightmare. Or I want my child back. Many are afraid to speak to school personnel because they're afraid their children will be punished in some way at school. Teachers have stated they are afraid to speak up about how bad they think the Common Core State Standards are for fear of losing a job or making their lives miserable at work. They said they are very stressed and overwhelmed trying to comply with all the requirements, some of which they say are just plain ridiculous. Some have stated that it takes so much time to do all the tasks required to comply with the Common Core State Standards Initiative that there's very little time left to actually teach the lessons. Experienced teachers have retired early, stating that Common Core State Initiative was the reason. Some young teachers, like the Colorado Teacher of the Year, are quitting, stating that they just can't do this anymore. Carol Burris, Teacher of the Year and Principal of the Year in New York State, wrote a book promoting the Common Core State Standards until it arrived in her classroom. Now she writes for the Washington Post about how bad it is. She analyzes the data and exposes the manipulated statistics. Experts in the education field are telling me that these standards are not appropriate. They too are being ignored. Dr. Sandra Stotsky, Professor Emeritus, who wrote the English Language Arts Standards from Massachusetts that propelled them from 9th in the country to 1st, is being ignored. Dr. Duke Pesta, Professor of Romance Literature in Wisconsin, is being ignored. Professor Chris Henkin of Seton Hall, statistics analyst, shows how statistics have been manipulated to make it appear that the U.S. is far below other countries when it is not, by comparing apples to oranges. Dr. James Milburn, Professor Emeritus of Stanford University, mathematician, says that they are inferior standards. All of these people, and many, many more, like Joan Robbins, and I could go on, all of these people are ignored, and bureaucrats issue edicts and dictates as if they were kings or oligarchs. The Common Core pushers. I believe this whole process has been corrupt from its inception. The Common Core pushers, stakeholders, and partners have been buying off everyone with grant money. The advocacy groups, including CPA, have been receiving millions of dollars from stakeholders like Silver Unlimited Foundation, Pearson Company, and there's a whole list on the chief state school officers of PARCC that are involved in this. Data mining and sharing. A commitment to not share children's private information, which is now posted online, means nothing. We had that same commitment from the healthcare industry, and look how well that worked out. Banks are being hacked every day. The U.S. government is being hacked. Remember Snowden? You can't guarantee the security of our children's privacy, and neither can the companies you contract with. Curriculum content concerns. The Common Core recommended reading list has some horrendous material loaded with sexually explicit excerpts throughout many books. I just brought two, and I have a whole bag of those books out here with excerpts just like the one that's marked here. Some of the materials are racially divisive. There are anti-American viewpoints presented with little or no pro-American counter to them. The math is unnecessarily time-consuming and switches the focus away from accuracy. The yearly math scheduling will make it more difficult for STEM students to reach the level required to get into STEM programs in universities. The cost is prohibitive. Parents' wishes are being ignored, political deals are being made. This whole boondoggle is a mess. It reeks of corruption from the beginning to the end. It was ushered in stealthily without parents' knowledge or understanding. Teachers were in service on pie-in-the-sky benefits initially, or even their percent account. Governors and organizations were bribed with grant money. Many teachers are afraid to speak out. Kids are crying, they're ignored. Parents are complaining, they're ignored. Experts are explaining why it's bad, they are ignored. Our children are not human capital. They're not for sale any place.